Hey guys, how's it going? I'm James, and this is episode 5 of the Ironman Lake Placid prep. To be honest, it's been quite a while since I filmed one of these. Things have gotten pretty crazy at work and been pretty busy with all my training, and especially as we get into the thick of things. I think we're right around 8 or 9 weeks out from Lake Placid, which means that we're like 2 or 3 weeks out from Ironman 70.3 Western Mass, and I'm less than 24 hours out from my first race of the season, which is the Max Performance New England season opener. So I thought that was a great time for this episode to break out all of my triathlon stuff and kind of go over what I have, what I'm using, and what I would recommend for someone first getting into the sport. Just because all the equipment that you need to get can be pretty overwhelming, especially because so many people that put stuff out online, they have a lot more than you truly need. And to be honest, I'm guilty of that as well. I've always been into, I guess, collecting things, for lack of a better term. I'm one to, if I see something that I think would help me out, I could quickly justify it in my head to go and buy that. Probably not the best, but just kind of how I am and how I operate. So we'll be going over what I think you need to get ready for your first one, some of the nice to haves that I would strongly recommend, and then some of the things that are purely if you want them and if you think it would benefit you, grab them, but you definitely don't need them. So we're going to kick things off with kind of miscellaneous stuff that a lot of these are pretty much nice to haves. There's a couple pretty strong ones that I'd recommend that everyone get. But we're going to kick things off with those things that aren't necessarily for one of the three sports, but just kind of overall. All right, we're going to start this out with some of the wearables that I use for just about every workout. There's one thing that almost never leaves my body unless there's something wrong, and that's my Whoop. Currently on the 4, the 5.0 just came out, but I've had the 4 for a couple of years, and honestly, I really love everything that Whoop's kind of all about and being able to track all the different metrics. And to be honest, I would recommend it if you're like a data-driven person like I am. Like I'm pretty obsessed with all the data that I'm getting. And now that I've had it for so long, I really think that not having that data would kind of stress me out a little bit. I do notice that, like, if it ever dies, I kind of worry about, oh, how did I sleep last night? But I think having that data, especially if you do something with that data and try to improve it, can be huge. The other wearable that I have on for just about every workout, not all of my bikes, because sometimes on the bike rides I just use my bike computer, but that's my Garmin Forerunner 745. This will track everything from swim, bike, run to kind of anything that you're doing. It has functionality to create custom like sports in it so that you can track kind of everything else if you're doing something that isn't a major sport. But it's definitely beneficial to have to be able to track your workouts. If you use Training Peaks, everything syncs straight over to that. So on a lot of my runs, a lot of my swims, all I have to do is hit start, and then it'll tell me what to do for everything else. Another one that I have for everything except for swimming is my Garmin Heart Rate Monitor Pro. I don't love using wrist heart rate just because it's not the most accurate. It's way better to have this chest heart rate monitor on, just because that'll give you the most accurate reading that you can get. It'll sync right up to my watch. It'll sync right up to my bike computer and tell me exactly where I'm at for the whole workout. Especially where a lot of this like zone 2 training is so based around heart rate. To be able to have that live and to be able to have that accurate is massive in my opinion. I strongly recommend a watch. It doesn't have to be a super expensive one. There's a lot of good options on Garmin. I know Coros makes some that are getting pretty popular. The Whoop, I would put that towards nice to have, towards maybe even above that nice to have, where it's really only for a specific type of person. Another that I would really recommend, and I would almost put this towards necessary, is going to be sunglasses. I use the Oakley Sutros. It doesn't need to be something like this. I think these are like $200. There's a ton of cheaper brands out there. I know I got a pair for my brother off of Amazon when he first started getting to running and triathlon and stuff. So you could definitely get some cheaper ones. And I've even used those ones for a couple bike rides if I forgot my Oakley somewhere. But the Oakley Sutros, I really like these. I've also used Roka sunglasses. To be honest, I don't know where I put them. I lost them about a year ago. I think I forgot them at a bike ride that I was doing. And it's killed me every single day that I don't have them. Another nice to have is shocks. These are the Open Runs. I don't think they're the Open Run Pros or anything like that. They're actually not that bad. They're less than $200. What's nice is they're bone conducting. So they just slide right on over the ears. They sit there. There's nothing blocking you. So when I'm out on a run or out on a bike, especially on the bike, I like having these on instead of, I'll never wear actual headphones. It'll either be these or I'll be playing something out loud just from my phone. Just because if you have your ears covered, you really don't know what's going on around you. And that's dangerous for you. That's dangerous for cars. And honestly, a lot less enjoyable of a ride. So it's either Open Runs or my phone just playing on speaker, or nothing. Honestly, it's usually nothing, but that's nice. This is one that you can definitely get away with not getting. But honestly, for its price and for how bad it can be if you don't use it, I would almost put this in necessity, at least for race day. Especially if you're in a 70.3 Ironman, something longer. Maybe for a sprint or Olympic, you can get away with it without it. But since I have it, I'm using it. It's this Body Glide. There's a ton of brands that make it, but Body Glide's the one that I've used. I haven't really tried any other ones, but I've had no issues, so I've had no reason. I'm sure that they're all kind of the same, and whichever one you pick up first is going to be the one you use forever. I've had people ask before, where do you put this? Yes, everywhere, anywhere that could possibly have any chafing. It's one of the grosser things in the sport, but really, like, especially before my Ironman last year, like, you use a lot of this. You probably go through a whole stick before that race. And to be honest, it's really just the last thing that you want is to be on the run in an Ironman or halfway through the bike and be super uncomfortable and have some chafing problems, and you still have 8 hours left in the race. So I couldn't recommend this enough, especially since it's not even $20. And especially if you're doing shorter races or you're using it for training, a stick will last you a long time. I know this one's kind of small, but they sell bigger ones, and you can use it for a while. So that's kind of it for wearables. Next, we can go into nutrition, just because it's not really for any individual sport. Your main nutritions that you're going to have are gels, bars, and like a carbohydrate drink mix and electrolytes. The only thing I have handy right now is a gel. I use the SIS gels. To be honest, they're water-based, so they go down super easy. I've used goos in the past. I like them. The flavors are good. They sit well with me, but to be honest, that like pasty texture doesn't really work with me. And then you kind of have to immediately drink water after, and especially later on in the race, you might not really be ready to drink some water at the same time that you're taking a gel. But these are water-based, so it's pretty easy. Just rip the top off and you just squeeze it and you're good. It goes down easy, sits in my stomach well. Flavors are good, but not too strong. But for bars, I will either do Honey Stinger waffles or I will do BPN Go bars. For carb mix, it's Tailwind. It's always been Tailwind. I do the naked flavor because there's no flavor in it. And then I usually mix that with some BPN electrolytes. My favorite flavor of the BPN electrolytes is salted watermelon. I've had mango. I really like mango, but the salted watermelon one I think knocks the rest of them out of the park. Final wearable would be your Tri kit. I was going to wait and include this later, but to be honest, you're always wearing this. So I think it's important to be showing in this early section where you're kind of looking for everything. Now, I would almost put Tri kit in that nice to have section, maybe a little bit more towards a necessity. But to be honest, depending on your goals, you don't really need anything crazy. So what I have here is the Zoot P1. I think it's like the Ultra Elite P1. Yeah, P1 Ultra. This is what I chose to race in for the Ironman. Leading up to it, I just bought, I think it was made by Synergy. It was a short sleeve. It was all gray, and loved it. Right around $100, and you can wear that for every part of the race. So I do think that there's some value, especially in some of those shorter events where you can just keep the same outfit on for the whole race and you don't have to worry about changing. And then in transition, maybe you put socks on, maybe you don't, but there's nothing else to change. I do know some people who will do just shorts or just compression shorts for the swim and throw a shirt on for the bike and the run. But to be honest, you don't You don't need to do that, but it's really a matter of, especially if it's your first one, you should really just do whatever you're comfortable with, whatever you've been training with. I'd recommend the tri-suit, but it's kind of up to you. If you're going for an Ironman, I would argue even more that it's all about what you're comfortable in, because each portion of that race is really long. And at least any Ironman event I've ever been to, they have changing tents. So if you are going to change, I've even seen pros like Lionel Sanders at Lake Placid last year who changed into specific running gear after the bike. So it's not like, I'm going to be the only one changing, because there's going to be hundreds of people, if not thousands of people changing. The final thing that I put in there in this necessary and kind of the similar as the Body Glide, I would put it in there because it's pretty cheap, and for all the benefits you get out of it, it's so worth it. It's probably the best bang for your buck on race day, but I need to go grab that. That is your race belt. This is Velo Champion, but if you go to any triathlon, they're probably going to be giving these away or selling these. I think whenever I've bought them, it's like $15 to $20. You get like 2 or 3 of them. What that does is you have these two elastics right here with the, I don't even know what to call these, but with the pieces at the end. So you can slide that right into your bib and then slide these on and pull it, and your bib's not going anywhere. And then it just wraps right around and you can buckle it in. Some of them, like this one, even have little slots that you could slide a gel into. To be honest, I've never used that, but it's a nice little feature to have. And what's so nice about that is, instead of, when you're in transition one specifically, instead of having to fumble around with your belt or with your bib number and having to pin yourself in the heat of the moment, you might even poke yourself with it. It doesn't feel good. I'll always have this already ready laying on top of my bike, and that is my first step in T1, is I throw that on and buckle it in, and it takes 3 seconds and you're already ready, and you don't even have to think about your bib for the rest of the race. But that's kind of it for everything that kind of covers all 3 sports at once. So now we're going to go sport by sport, starting with the swim. All right, so I would argue that the swim is the portion of the race where most people are the most uncomfortable. So I think the heavy emphasis on this is going to be do what you're comfortable with, and get super comfortable with that equipment. So for everyday swimming, for your actual training, everything going into race day, there's definitely some necessities, but a lot of these are going to be kind of personal preference for what you need, what you want. Obviously, number one is going to be your bathing suit. I was a swimmer through college, which if you've seen the other episodes, you probably knew that. But so I opt for a Speedo. That's just what I've always swam in. To me, it's what's the most comfortable to swim in, even though it's you don't have a lot on. When I'm in the water, it's the most comfortable, and anything else kind of feels odd at this point because I've put in thousands of hours in the Speedo. For guys, at least, what I could recommend is you could do anything from a compression short. I would recommend getting something specifically for swimming. So you can see like a jammer, which will be the same thing as compression shorts. It'll be right above the knees. You have your drawstring. It'll just be a little more it'll withstand the water a little bit better than just compression shorts. You could do a Speedo. They have some that are kind of in between, that it's like a box instead of a cut. So you're a little more covered if you're more comfortable with that. At first, if you're just getting in the water, you could throw a pair of basketball shorts on and get in. Anything that gets you in the water, anything that you're comfortable in at first is going to be huge. I just personally opt for the Speedo. The next thing you absolutely need for swimming is going to be a pair of goggles. If you're doing triathlon without goggles or training without goggles, I give you all the respect in the world. Would not recommend that. I would put goggles at an absolute need to have, even if they were $1,000 for a pair of goggles. I would say buy them right now, because you're going to get way more out of your swims. You can get a whole bunch of different kinds of goggles, and to be honest, over the years, I've accumulated quite a few. My personal ones that I opt for are made by the Magic 5. Right now, I'm wearing the clear ones. I have some that are reflective, but the nose piece broke, so I need to replace those. But I really will go one or two ways for race day. If it's not super sunny out, I'll go clear. And if it is super sunny out, I'll go reflective, just because it'll kind of help you with that sun and that glare. These, I think my brother uses these, but they stay in my swim bag. They're a little more comfortable. You have a much bigger rubber gasket on the outside. These are made by TYR, an incredible swim company. Most of my stuff is TYR. But these will be a little bit more comfortable, sit a little bit further away from the eye. This pair is my girlfriend's, made by Roka. Another one kind of sits far away from the eyes, be a little bit more comfortable. You have a little bit of reflection. And then these ones, I don't really wear these. I wore them when I was kind of in between goggles. These are the Michael Phelps brand. And to be honest, these are like purely race goggles. If you're not used to wearing goggles in the pool, if you're just getting into swimming, I think that would be pretty uncomfortable. Next thing in swimming that you're gonna need, and when I say you're gonna need this for your training, you might not necessarily need it, but any race you go to, you're gonna need a swim cap. They're gonna give you one, but I would recommend training in one just because, again, you don't wanna try anything new on race day. So I have a whole bunch of caps. I accumulated these from races, from college, from different swims I've done. Personally, I opt for a silicone cap. They're a little bit thicker, a little bit more comfortable. But I would recommend trying a latex cap, mostly because any race you go to is going to give you a latex cap. Very rarely are you going to go somewhere. I've done a couple like charity swims. I do Swim Across America every year. They give us a silicone cap, which is awesome. But any triathlon I've ever been to, from local sprints to full Ironmans, it's always a latex cap, which personally I don't love, but I've never had any issues with my cap during an open water race. So I would recommend wearing the cap that's comfortable for you, but definitely testing out a latex cap beforehand. I think you can get them for super cheap. To be honest, it's been a while since I've paid for a cap, just because you always have your college team's cap or your club team's cap, and then all the races give out their caps for free. So up next for swimming, we're gonna go into training equipment, which I love. I'm a huge equipment nerd, as if you'll be able to tell from this video for sure. The first thing I'd recommend getting, because again, super cheap, but super beneficial, is a mesh bag. So this one was free for me from Roger Williams when I swam there, but it's just a mesh bag. This one has a little bit more to it, a couple pockets, but most of them you're gonna just have the bag, and that's fine. This will hold all your equipment, and this can come right onto the deck, right in front of your lane, and then everything's kind of in one spot. You don't have to worry about moving around and grabbing it, but you can get those for less than $10, and I think that's huge. The next two things that I'm gonna show you, I wouldn't even recommend buying. I have these from my swim career, but any pool you go to that offers lap swimming is 99% of the time gonna have these. And that's gonna be your kickboard, that's gonna be your buoy. These are both Tier, I think. I don't know what brand the buoy is. It's fallen off. Yeah, Tier. Super faded, but it's here. Tier kickboard, but to be honest, you can't go wrong with any brand. They're all pretty much standard. But what these are, obviously the kickboard is going to help you with kicking, which I don't think any triathletes do enough. I know I don't do enough as a triathlete. Your buoy is going to be one of your most beneficial tools in swimming. What that's going to do is I would say probably 95% of swimmers that I've seen first get into the sport, and that's from 8-year-olds that I coached all the way up to adults that are first getting into triathlon swimming or swimming in general. They all swim with their hips way too low. And when you're swimming like this, you're dragging against the water, and everything's going to be working harder than it has to be. Swimming is a sport of efficiency, and the goal is to have every single movement in that water be doing something for you. And if you're swimming like this, nothing's helping you, and you're working against yourself. So if you throw this buoy in, what that's going to do is it's going to force your hips up, and you're going to be swimming more flat, and you'll feel way more efficient. And what that'll also do is kind of get you used to that body position so that you can recreate it once you don't have the buoy in. So that's definitely huge. So now for the equipment that you're going to have to buy. The only thing I would put in here as necessary, and again, it's not like if you don't have this, you can't do a triathlon, you can't train swimming. Swimming's pretty simple. You need a bathing suit and you need goggles to get in the water. But these are things that if you want to get better at swimming, I would definitely recommend. Paddles. Paddles are going to be your most efficient tool that you can have in swimming. If you don't have a coach on deck, paddles can almost take that over if you're really focusing and if you're thinking about your stroke. So what'll happen is these specific paddles, I've taken the wrist strap off of. So you can see here, the only thing on it is on my fingertips. So what'll end up happening is as I go to pull, if I'm pulling too flat, this will lift up and pull down. If I'm pulling too high, it'll feel weird and it'll pull my hands back like this and it'll feel wrong. But if I'm pulling just right, all I'm gonna feel is some extra resistance. So paddles will give you real-time feedback if you're paying attention to where you're at and what's going on. So I would definitely recommend these. Swimming's a hard sport to get extra resistance on, and your paddles will allow you to do that, especially if you're swimming correctly. So they'll either give you that feedback of, oh, maybe your pull's a little off, because you'll notice your hands moving it's moving involuntarily, or you'll get that added pull and you'll really feel it a little bit more in your lats, and it'll just be all that real-time feedback and resistance. Next is going to be fins. Fins, especially for newer swimmers, are going to be huge just because it'll allow you to swim a little bit longer, it'll allow you to swim a little bit faster. And I think that also having those fins and kicking is going to, like the buoy, kind of force those hips up because you will be moving faster. If you're moving slower, it's a little bit easier for those hips to drop down. But if you're moving faster, you're going to be a lot more flat in the water. So definitely don't get into the habit of swimming with fins all the time. Me personally, I'll wear them a lot when I'm kicking. And if I'm doing really, really fast stuff, I'll throw them on as well occasionally. But definitely recommend fins if used correctly. The next one, which really this is if you're getting super into really focusing on your technique and your drills, but it's a snorkel. Again, this is a tier snorkel that I got for free from my club team probably 8-9 years ago. But you just slide it on. The difference between this and your normal swim snorkel is it goes in front of your face. So what that'll do is instead of it being here and getting thrown around by the water, it's here and it's going to stay nice and flat. I think the biggest benefit to this is if you're focusing on drills, you don't need to breathe. So you can really just slow down and focus on your arms and your legs. Almost always if I'm pulling, I'm using this just because it allows me, like I said, to really slow it down and only focus on that pulling. So I would definitely recommend a snorkel. Definitely a little bit of a learning curve. It was for me when I first started using it, but it's become one of my favorite tools to use in the pool. The last swim tool that you're going to need is going to be your wetsuit. This can be anything from a nice to have to an absolute necessity. For instance, the race I'm going to tomorrow is wetsuit required. So yeah, so it's a necessity for that. Most Ironman races you're going to go to will end up being wetsuit legal. But even if they're not wetsuit legal, if you're not going for any awards, you can still wear one. Your wetsuit's going to give you a ton of more buoyancy. You're going to feel a little bit better in that water. But it's definitely important to test it out and get the right one. So personally, I opt for a sleeveless wetsuit. This is the Tier Hurricane 5. I opt for sleeveless because doing research before, I learned that a lot of swimmers that swam for their whole lives prefer the sleeveless because it's less restricting on the shoulders. And I think after using it for a while, I can second that. Definitely kind of feel like you have that range of motion and you can move around. But I personally love the wetsuit. If it's an option, I'm doing it. Maybe not this year in Placid if it's not wetsuit legal, but if it is, I'm for sure wearing it. You can go a little bit faster without the same level of effort, and really just helps you float. It's almost like a pull buoy in the race. Definitely will help you float, get those hips up, but definitely you got to wear it beforehand because it can be a little restricting in your chest, and especially if you're not a confident swimmer, that can be a little weird at first. Even for someone like me who swam their whole life, it was a little weird experiencing that the first couple times, but definitely comfortable in it and definitely recommend a wetsuit for sure. But it doesn't have to be anything crazy. They definitely sell cheaper wetsuits. I would make sure you get a swimming one because some of the surfing ones and some of the just to be warmer ones are a different material, and that can kind of weigh you down. All right, now we're onto the bike, and you'd think the most important thing for the bike is the bike itself, but that one's pretty obvious, so we're going to touch on that one last. I would say the most important thing besides the bike, and this is because every race is going to require it, and to be honest, it's not that smart to do it without it, that's going to be your helmet. My first helmet that I got is made by Giro. I think that's how you say it. I bought this one, I think it was like 50, 60 bucks, so not too bad. And to be honest, for what you get out of it, it's going to be the best bang for your buck that you can possibly get in triathlon. The last thing you want is to fall off the bike and not have one of these on. To be honest, it's a great helmet, this one here. Super ventilated. It was a little hard to get some stickers on. Actually, looking at it, I can see some leftover stickers, but I recently upgraded that. So this one I wear on all my training rides. Anytime that I'm on the bike that isn't a race, I'm going to be wearing this. And then starting this season, I picked this up, also Giro. It's their Aero helmet. So you have your removable visor and you have everything in there. And then you clip it on and you're just a lot more aero. I'm interested to see how this feels in racing. I've worn it out on the road a little bit, but tomorrow during the race will be the first time I'm putting in a big effort with it. The next thing for bikes is going to be electronics. So kind of quickly, this one doesn't matter as much. I use a Garmin Edge. I don't know what number it is, to be honest, but that's just what I opted for. To be honest, I don't think that you need anything this crazy. This is pretty expensive. Anything could be cheap. I know Wahoo makes a whole bunch of them. I think Coros even makes some. But kind of whatever you can get your hands on to be able to have that live data. And it's also kind of a nice to have because you really don't need that data while you're there. Your watch can do everything for you. I also know that they do make holders for your watch that you can just take the straps off and connect it right in there, and you basically have a bike computer anyway. Maybe a little much to be fumbling around with in transition, but for training, that can definitely be worth it. Now, this one, I would put nice to have for price. However, if you're riding in busy areas or you're riding on streets without much shoulder, this Garmin Vario would be something that I absolutely recommend. If you don't have a Garmin or if you don't have a bike computer, you can just opt for a regular rear light. If you do have that bike computer, I definitely recommend getting this Garmin Vario. The way that this works is not only is it a light to help cars see me that are coming towards me, it's a light that will sensor on here and let me know when there's cars coming, and it'll show you a dot on the side as it gets closer to you. So I think especially on the tri-bike, when you're in aero, it can be nerve-wracking, and it kind of always sounds like there's a car behind you. So instead of having to constantly try to look over your shoulder, you know if there's something there. To be honest, I've ridden thousands of miles with the Varia, and I think in total it's missed 2, maybe 3 cars, and looking back at those situations, it was either on a bend, and to be honest, it kind of makes sense that the Garmin did miss that. So I don't think it's an excuse to not pay attention, but it's definitely something that can help you pay even better attention. The final thing you're going to need for race day on the bike is going to be some cleats. This could be, if you don't have clipless pedals, this could just be your running sneakers, which is what I'd recommend. If you don't have clipless pedals, I'd recommend clipless pedals. But if you have clipless pedals, you're going to need a pair of cleats. These are also Giro. To be honest, I just wanted white cleats that would come in time, and this is what they had, so I have no alliance to the brand. Personally, I use Speed Play pedals, which are just the circle ones. To be honest, not as popular as the SPDs that you'll kind of see everybody have, but this is what I learned on, and I'm not a great cyclist, so if I get comfortable with something, it's going to be very hard to change my mind. Finally, you don't need this as much on race day. You can probably get your own kit, but that's going to be some tools. I would recommend just getting an Allen wrench set, and this actually came with my new bike. It's a torque wrench set. You have to be really careful with Allen keys on a lot of these screws just because they are set up to be at a specific torque. So if you over torque it, you really mess some stuff up. If you under torque it, you could get messed up. So definitely important to have, and not super expensive. But if you ever plan on doing any work on your own, you're going to need that. Obviously, I don't have it with me, but a flat kit is huge if you don't have tubeless tires. A little CO2 cartridge with the adapter to pump your tire up, especially if you're riding outside. That's saved me a million times. And then tire levers are massive as well. So now let's go to the bikes, because that's what I love, even though I know nothing about them. So I have 2 bikes. One's brand new, one I got last season. And it kind of goes to show what you can do. You definitely don't need 2. I don't even know if I'd recommend you get 2. But if you're riding enough and you're riding both of them enough, I think you can justify it. So kind of going a little more bare bones, what you can use really first, the best bike that you can start training with is the one that you have. Get out there, get riding. It's so much fun, and you'll be able to grow fitness, and maybe you get another bike the closer to your race. But this is my road bike, the Cervelo Caledonia. I think it has SRAM Rival electronic shifting, which is another nice to have, but definitely not a necessity. Disc brakes, and I really like this bike. I wanted a road bike just because it's a little more easy to ride day to day. If I'm ever doing like long rides for fun, I prefer to be on the road bike. It's a little more comfortable, a little more relaxed than the tri bike. The reason why I went with Cervelo is because that's what my tri bike was at the time. I've upgraded, but love the brand, love the bikes, and it was in my price range as well. So I went and picked that one up last year, and I've gotten a lot of fun rides out of it. And I'm going to slide this out of the way as we go into the TT bike. So you'll hear a couple phrases thrown around for TT bikes. You'll hear TT bikes because that's what they are. You'll hear triathlon bikes because that's just kind of the name that's been adopted because most people use them for triathlon. But basically, you're going to have a lot more aggressive. You're going to have the aero bars. And the one that I went with is the Quintana VPR. I think this is going to be the first time that I'm showing this on the channel because I accidentally deleted the video of me unboxing it. But ordered this from QR a couple weeks ago. You can do everything custom. So I went with Shimano Di2, Ultegra. I went with the Vision Pro front end, power meter, kind of really just threw everything on there that I wanted to. One thing that I did switch was the saddle that it came with. I purchased a bi-saddle not too long ago, just personally more comfortable for me. But this is the TT bike. Love it. It came with, I got the head wheels on it. So I have race wheels now, which is going to be huge because I think that was like $300 to rent on race day. I do need to convert them to tubeless, but really excited to get ripping on this thing. Tomorrow will be the first time that I can really use it at a big effort. I've taken it outside a whole bunch, but I get to race on it tomorrow. So pumped for that. But that's really it for biking. So we can move on to running, which is probably the simplest of the three, but definitely can get exciting with it. For running, to be honest, I think that 3 pairs of shoes is the perfect number. I have more than that, and to be honest, I think you could absolutely get away with 2 or even 1. Obviously, kind of the running theme of this video is whatever you have, whatever you're ready to use is probably what's best, especially to get into it. I'll explain why I think it's 3, and try to explain why I have more than 3. One thing that has nothing to do with shoes for running is going to be some socks. Cannot recommend features enough. I've worn them. I can probably count on one hand how many times I've run in non-feature socks since I started getting into triathlon. Love them. Best designs, most comfortable. I have some that I've literally had since I did my first marathon, which was like 5 years ago. So can't recommend them enough. Super cool company. When I was in Austin, I met a couple of people that work there, and they've created a culture where everyone's bought in and everyone just really loves what they're doing. So can't recommend that enough. Now let's get into shoes. Your first shoe is going to be your daily trainer. I have 3 pairs of daily trainers with me right now. What I used at first was the Hoka Clifton 9s. Loved them. To be honest, a little bit too much cushion for me now, even though I have some stuff that's going to contradict that. Just kind of over time, I grew out of them, and it's not my preference now. But at first, especially, I'm a bigger guy, so getting into running at first, that was huge for me to have all that cushion and to have that big sole that the Hokas have. So what I choose most of the time for my daily trainer is the New Balance 1080s. Pretty simple, not much to them, and you can do anything from super easy long runs to some speed work. So I definitely like these. The biggest thing for your daily trainers would be to get something that doesn't have a carbon plate in them, which is what I'm looking for most of the time, is to not have that, just because then when you do throw those carbon plated shoes on, it's going to be that much better. The 2 other pairs that I have are going to be your Asics Nova Blasts, which, to be honest, I really only use these for very easy miles because you can see they do have that big sole on them, and they're super cushioned, super comfortable. So I'd say I probably run in these the least, but I definitely like them a lot. And then the Nike Invincible Run 3s, kind of similar. I do some speed work in them, but for the most part, it's just very easy miles or long miles. I do think that the material of these, they are like a little more plasticky. So if it's ever raining out, I'll definitely throw these on just because it's a little more comfortable. Speed workouts. I prefer, if I do one speed workout a week, I prefer to throw some carbons on, not race day shoes, but some carbon shoes. That has been anything from the Saucony Endorphin Speeds. Every once in a while I'll throw on some race day shoes, some old race day shoes. But right now what I'm using are the New Balance SC trainers. You got that carbon plate in there. They got a lot of pop to them. And I mean, look at the colorway. I mean, that's really what sold it. No, just kidding. Super comfortable, super fast. And to be honest, I've even done, actually, I think my 5K PR is in these, not my race day shoes, because on St. Patrick's Day, I wasn't sure how big of an effort I was going to put out there, so I threw these on. So definitely fast. And to be honest, I'm going to show you race day shoes next, but you could totally get away with a non-carbon plated everyday shoe and a speed workout shoe that you're going to wear on race day, or even just one shoe that you're going to wear for the whole thing, whatever works for you. So now my race day shoes, I'm sure you've seen a lot of Vaporflies, a lot of Sauconys, and kind of just like the flagship brands, and people switching around a lot. I have not switched once. The first race day shoes I bought were the Saucony Endorphin Elites. I'm on my second pair, and the first marathon I did, I ran in Brooks. Kind of like I was saying, like I just had one pair of Brooks that I wore for everything, and that's what I raced in. These were the shoes that I wore at Lake Placid, the shoes that I wore for every triathlon after that, and also these specific ones are the ones that I wore at the Austin Marathon, and I'll likely wear at Lake Placid again unless I decide to buy another pair. I think it's super comfortable. It was super comfortable when I was running fast. It's super comfortable when you're running a little bit slower in an Ironman. There's not much to them, so they're super light, and I can't recommend these enough. I bought them. I've loved them. Don't see myself changing anytime soon. Who knows, maybe next season I'll try out something different like a Nike, but I am in love with these shoes. The final thing for running, and really the final thing overall, because it kind of covers everything, is going to be a hat. This hat here is the 4-leaf endurance hat. It's more of a trucker hat, so I'll only run it occasionally to rep the brand. What I prefer and what I'm running in most of the time, which I'm kind of surprised looking around, I don't have one with me, I usually do, is the Cieli endurance hat, specifically the BPN ones. I think I have every colorway. Just in love with those hats, and they're super comfortable. I think it's Boko or Boca makes a great running hat. But really just any running specific hat, something light, something that isn't going to get too wet, and something that isn't going to get too heavy once it is wet, because you're going to be sweating. It might rain. You're out there for a while, and you don't want that sun in your face. So really, hat, sunglasses is a staple for just about any run that I do. That is it for what I think you need, what I think you should get, what I think you might want. Thank you so much for watching another episode if you stayed through the whole thing. If I missed something that you think is a necessity, comment it down below. Definitely interested to see what you guys think, even if it's just something that maybe you have a different shoe that you really like, that I don't have. Just kind of get that conversation going, and it's super interesting to see what other people use and what other people deem necessary compared to what I think. But tomorrow's the first race, so I think these episodes are going to be pretty quick because I'm going to film everything I pack with me to go race next. And as always, you can see below to the link to my Instagram, the link to join 4-Leaf Endurance Club, the link to my TikTok, link to my Strava, and always remember that we get to do this.